Imagine waking up one morning to find that your neighbor has sold your backyard to a third person, and now that third person is building a military fortress right outside your window aimed directly at your bedroom. This sounds like a nightmare, but for India, this is the geopolitical reality of the Shaksgam Valley. While the world is distracted by wars in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, a silent but deadly shift has just occurred in the high Himalayas. China has suddenly refreshed its claim over a territory that legally belongs to India but was illegally handed over by Pakistan. This is not just a diplomatic statement. This is about concrete roads and military infrastructure that could cut off India's most strategic assets in the north. Why is China doing this right now? Why, after decades of relative silence on this specific valley, has Beijing suddenly decided to bristle and aggressively defend its construction projects here? There is a specific military objective behind this move that connects the Karakoram Highway to a new secret front opening against India. A move that could render the defenses of Siachen Glacier vulnerable from a side we never expected. What is this secret infrastructure and how does it change the war map for the Indian Army? I will tell you the terrifying reality of this strategic encirclement later in this video, but first we need to understand the massive diplomatic explosion that has just taken place in New Delhi. Hello everyone and welcome to this deep dive analysis. Today we are discussing a development that has sent shockwaves through the Ministry of External Affairs and the Indian Army HQ. The Times of India and several major outlets have reported that China has effectively doubled down on its claim over the Shaksgam Valley. For those who might not know, the Shaksgam Valley is a 5,180 square kilometer trans-Karakoram tract. To put that in perspective, that is an area significantly larger than the state of Goa. This is Indian territory in the Union Territory of Ladakh, but it is currently under Chinese administration. The latest flashpoint has occurred because China has publicly defended its construction activities in this region, calling it a matter of its own sovereignty. This has triggered a sharp and blistering response from India. The Ministry of External Affairs has categorically stated that the Shaksgam Valley is a part of India and we have never accepted the so-called China-Pakistan Boundary Agreement of 1963. Even the Indian Army Chief General Upendra Dwivedi has signaled that any activity in this illegally held territory is a direct security concern for India. But to truly understand why this is happening today, we have to go back to the root of the betrayal. The year was 1963. Pakistan and China were finalizing a border agreement. Now you have to understand the absurdity of this situation. Pakistan was negotiating the border of a territory that did not belong to it. The Shaksgam Valley was part of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, which acceded to India in 1947. Pakistan was merely an occupier in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Yet, in a bid to secure a powerful ally against India, Pakistan signed the Sino-Pakistan Frontier Agreement in March 1963. Through this agreement, Pakistan gifted over 5,000 square kilometers of Indian land to China. It was a transaction where the seller did not own the land and the buyer knew it was stolen property. For decades, China treated this as a quiet buffer zone. But in recent years, and specifically in the last few months, satellite imagery has shown something disturbing. China is not just sitting on this land anymore. They are transforming it. We are seeing the construction of metalled roads moving from the Xinjiang region deep into the Shaksgam Valley. These are not tourist roads. These are heavy load-bearing roads capable of moving artillery and mobilized infantry. Now you might ask, why does a road in a frozen valley matter so much? Geography is destiny, and nowhere is this truer than in the Himalayas. The Shaksgam Valley lies to the north of the Siachen Glacier. We all know Siachen. It is the world's highest battlefield where brave Indian soldiers hold the Saltoro Ridge. For years, India's primary focus in Siachen has been the threat from Pakistan on the west. But with China building infrastructure in Shaksgam to the north, India now faces a classic pincer movement. If a conflict breaks out, China can pressure the Siachen sector from the north while Pakistan pushes from the west, effectively sandwiching Indian positions. But there is a deeper layer to this news that we need to analyze. Why did China issue this fresh claim now? Geopolitics is never about coincidences. It is about timing. This statement comes at a time when India and China was supposedly making progress in disengagement in other sectors like Demchok and Depsang. By opening the Shaksgam wound afresh, Beijing is sending a clear signal. It is a signal that while they might de-escalate tactically in one area, they are legally hardening their stance on the entire boundary. Let us look at the official Indian response because it is very significant. The rejection of the 1963 pact is not new, but the intensity with which New Delhi has flagged the construction activity is new. India has stated that these actions are an attempt to alter the status quo on the ground. In international law, there is a concept called adverse possession. If you hold land and build on it for long enough without challenge, it becomes yours de facto. India is making sure that the world knows we are challenging every inch of asphalt China lays down in Shaksgam. Now remember, I told you in the beginning about the secret objective and the infrastructure that changes everything. Here is what you need to know. The roads China is building in Shaksgam are likely intended to link up with the Karakoram Highway and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor or CPEC. Currently, CPEC runs through Gilgit-Baltistan, which is also Indian territory under Pakistani occupation. By connecting Shaksgam to this network, China is creating a redundant supply loop. If, in a war scenario, the Indian Air Force targets the Karakoram Highway, China would have an alternate route through Shaksgam to resupply Pakistan or its own troops. This is the nightmare scenario, a dual-access route that makes the northern front incredibly difficult to blockade. Furthermore, this construction creeps dangerously close to the Aghil Pass and the Indira Col. Indira Col is the northernmost point of India's Siachen sector. By militarizing the Shaksgam Valley, China is effectively trying to look over the shoulder of Indian defenses at Siachen. It negates the height advantage that India fought so hard to secure during Operation Meghdoot in 1984. The timing also relates to the broader geopolitical tussle. India is asserting itself as a global power. We are seeing increased cooperation with the US and a renewed focus on our northern borders. China's fresh claim is a psychological operation. It is an attempt to remind India that the border issue is far from resolved and that Beijing holds the keys to escalation. They want to pin India down in the Himalayas so we cannot project power in the Indian Ocean. So what can India do? Militarily, India has already ramped up its infrastructure. The Border Roads Organization is working at record speeds. We are building tunnels and all-weather roads to ensure our troops in eastern Ladakh and Siachen are supplied year-round. Diplomatically, India has stopped being polite. By calling out the illegal nature of the 1963 pact repeatedly, India is keeping the legal claim alive for future generations. We also have to consider the domestic angle in China. Xi Jinping is facing economic turbulence at home. Historically, when authoritarian regimes face internal pressure, they stir up external nationalism. Claiming sovereignty over Shaksgam and bristling at India's objections serves to rally the domestic audience in China, showing that the Communist Party is strong and unyielding. This situation in Shaksgam is a reminder that the threat from China is multidimensional. It is not just about soldiers clashing with clubs at Galwan. It is about cartographic aggression. It is about lawfare, where they use treaties like the 1963 pact to legitimize occupation, and it is about infrastructure warfare, where they change the geography to suit their military needs. The Indian government's bristles, as the report says, are entirely justified. Accepting the status quo in Shaksgam would mean accepting the encirclement of Siachen. It would mean allowing China and Pakistan to permanently link their military logistics in a way that threatens the entirety of Ladakh. As we move forward, we must watch this sector closely. The Shaksgam Valley is no longer a frozen wasteland of history. It is an active volcano in the geopolitics of South Asia. The fresh claims by China are an attempt to normalize their encroachment. But as the Indian Army Chief and the Ministry have made clear, India is watching and India will not accept this illegal alteration of facts on the ground. This is a developing story and the implications will unfold over the coming months and years. It is crucial for every Indian to understand that our northern map is being challenged not just by rhetoric but by bulldozers and cement. The defense of Shaksgam is the defense of India's sovereignty. Thank you for listening and stay tuned for more updates on this critical strategic issue.